Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 348. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss The Big Green as it celebrates its 30th anniversary. So, I rented this VHS. I watched half of it. That was 30 years ago. I still, up until the point that we watched it for the purpose of this conversation, I had not seen past maybe the first 35 or 40 minutes of this movie. That's my history with it.
Was this like Tall Tale where you just knew you weren't feeling it and decided to pull the plug? Okay. Yep. I vividly remember this trailer. I think it had to play before something that I watched a lot, like maybe like Toy Story or something.
Right.
Because I remember the audio of them saying the big, like a hands in, high fivey kind of moment. I remember that so clearly, but I have never seen this movie. And I was definitely conflating it a little bit with Little Giants because I knew it was some overlap with the Sandlot cast. And like basically whoever didn't make the cut with Mighty Ducks because they couldn't skate, they landed in these other sports movies, which are more teachable. So I really, I thought I knew what I was in for, but I really didn't.
This movie falls into the era of the 90s kids sports movies, right? Like within a 2 to 3 year window, you had this, Mighty Ducks, Rookie of the Year, Little Big League, like all of these movies. Little Giants was one that you just pointed out. All of these movies, Sandlot, right? Like they all kind of lived in this era. And to your point, a lot of them overlapped specifically with the Sandlot. And if I remember correctly, I shut this off and then I just put the Sandlot on. So, this was a movie that it didn't perform well in the box office. It cost them $12 million to make this movie. I don't know where the money went. It only made 17.7 at the box office. However, it sold over 5 million copies on VHS tape. So I think that's where a lot of people saw this movie for the first time. So, is this a movie that should have had more success in the box office? Do I regret years later not sticking with it? And has the movie aged well? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
The small town of Elma, Texas is a shell of its former self. It has fallen off the football map despite previous success, and the closure of the local factory has put the town in financial ruin. The kids are often bored and have the worst grades in the state. Anna Montgomery is a teacher from England who refuses to let the children fail and introduces them to soccer as a means of motivating them. She enters them into a league despite the kids having no experience and calls on Sheriff Tom Palmer to help her drive the team to Austin, where they lose to the defending state champions, the Knights, 18-0. Tom joins on to coach the team with Anna, who he not so secretly has a crush on. The team continues to struggle until they learn that new student Juan Morales can play very well. Juan's mother, however, does not want him to play, as they frequently move, meaning Juan is never able to make or maintain friendships. Eventually, she allows him to join the team, and they quickly go on a winning streak. He becomes close to teammate Kate, and the team takes on the moniker of the Big Green, which they took the name after the previous football field that had all of that success. Slowly, the town embraces the game of soccer, except for Kate's father, a drunk, unemployed bigot who is also a single parent. The team's success sets them up for the championship game in a rematch with the Knights. The town comes together to purchase proper uniforms for the team, who has lifted the town's spirits. Jay Huffer, the Knights coach and former resident of Elma, learns from Edwin, Kate's father, that Juan's mother is undocumented in the United States, and he reports her. Tom, being the sheriff, needs to respond to the call, where Juan's mother admits to having purchased a false social security card to file taxes and hide her status. She then, overnight, flees with Juan because she is afraid of deportation, leaving the team without their best player. The team is devastated, especially Kate, who feels betrayed by Tom and by her father. They travel to play the Knights, who take a 2-0 lead at the half. When all seems lost, Tom arrives with Juan and his mother. He has found them a lawyer and offers to sponsor them to keep them in the United States. With Juan in the game, the Big Green comes from behind to tie the game. They go to penalty kicks, where Newt, the youngest player on the team, scores the winning goal. After the victory, they make Jay kiss Ernie, their mascot, who is a goat. And we have a very happy end to this film. That was maybe the quickest plot that I've ever had to go through on this show. Certainly the quickest plot we've ever had to, work through in regards to a Disney sports movie. It's very simple. And I think that they were kind of trying to tell a story here. Listen, I'm giving my review away off the rip, which I try not to do, but I don't think it's going to take very long for our friends here to sort of see where we're going to land. I think this movie was trying to tell a story. I think they were trying to send a message, and they half-baked the entire thing.
You're absolutely right. With regard to not giving away our feelings up top, I knew that was going to be a huge challenge this week because, unfortunately, this film does not have a lot of redeeming qualities about it, which really grieves me to say, because the writer-director Holly Goldberg Sloan was the first female director for a Disney live-action film. And to put that into context, the first female director of an animated film comes 20 years later with Jennifer Lee co-directing Frozen. So it's not to say there weren't female directors in between, but I am saying they're very few and far between. So once I learned that, I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to be tearing down another woman's work when this was such a huge milestone for her career and for Disney's. What really kills me is that she was also the writer of Angels in the Outfield. So we know that she can write a great sports movie. But to circle back to what you were saying earlier about, this era of kids sports movies that came out, I have a little bit of a theory, and I don't have any evidence, but I'm just thinking about, the films that were being produced then and the ones that had success. And, we know Disney's penchant for trying to capitalize on that success or repeat a formula that they know works. I'm wondering if this was written as an adult film or more like an Angels in the Outfield type of film where it's just as much about kids as it is the adults. But because of the success of all of these kids films, they sort of repackaged it to focus on the kids team. Because to me, the more interesting stories are the ones that the adults are dealing with.
Yeah.
And those storylines, and those are the ones that feel the most half-baked.
Yeah, and I think we'll sort of flesh those out as we get into it here. So, I mean, just from the opening credits, with this animated goat out of nowhere, just running on the screen, it pulls up slowly the title, The Big Green. And then the animated goat looks at you, breaks the fourth wall, and goes, Big Green, and runs off. Like, it's a very bizarre open, and there's no music playing underneath it.
Did you look at my notes? This was a rare occasion where we got to watch the movie together and take notes together, but that was the most jarring thing to me. The animation was cool, but playing it dry, that was a choice.
It's dead silent.
And off the rip, there's like no hook. Once we meet some of our main characters, this setup is so desperately trying to be Stand By Me. And I'm not just saying that because of the four boys. It is really doubling down on the idea that there is nothing to do in this town, Elma. They did, I think it's worth noting because you mentioned the budget earlier. They were shooting on location outside of Austin. So in open dirt fields. So like, where did all of this money go?
It had to go to Steve Guttenberg.
Yeah.
Most of that had to go to him.
Yeah, and maybe Olivia Dabo. I hope I'm saying that right, because she's coming off of Wonder Years at this point.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that her star status demanded that much of a salary. But suffice to say, at least between the two, I'm sure with the heaviest being on Guttenberg, that's where most of the budget went. Because you're right, they're otherwise shooting in a classroom, in a small town, and on a dirt field. That's the whole movie. And
your wardrobe budget is very minimal because they're doubling down on this idea that, you know, the town is down and out. So they don't get the jerseys made up until the very end. They're all just playing soccer in street clothes. So a lot of it must have gone on transporting the cast from LA to Texas. But back to this open here, which I'm going to dub as my nightmare. The kids lay down in the field. And again, I understand we are trying to establish that there is nothing to do in Elma. But they lay down in the field, sprinkle Cheetos across themselves. And the whole time they're doing it, I'm thinking, oh gosh, they're going to get attacked by birds. But it turns out that was the objective of doing this. I was like, are you serious? There were so many ways we could have established this idea of the kids being bored other than making them pigeon bait. And then Miss Montgomery rolls up. She thinks that she's saving them, which is actually kind of funny because she hoses them down. The only thing that's missing here from making this scene entirely on the nose is to use Hot for Teacher.
Yeah, this whole thing is just bizarre. Like, I like the setup of the town. I think it's a good intro to the town and how downtrodden it is and how bored these kids are, that this is what they're stooping to. And it also was the 90s where it's like, let's just put kids in zany situations. It's not unlike some of the things we see them do in Heavyweights. I mean, this is a little over the top, but you have this fast forward. Miss Montgomery zooms up and gets out of her car and grabs the hose, and it's like Hanna-Barbera, like the slide whistle, like, you know, friggin' stupid sound effects. And then as she hoses them down, it's in slow motion. It's just so bizarre. It's so startling.
Again,
it's just not good.
This is where it kills me because I don't want to tear down another female's work. But like, to your point, the speed ramps and the slow-mo are so unmotivated in this film. And like, that's the other thing. It's clearly winter because the irony of calling this movie The Big Green and really not having a lot of like lush greenery because it's the winter time and everything's dead. There's no leaves on the trees. The fields are all dirt.
They shot from November to January.
Exactly. But like, it's not even compelling to look at visually. That's one of the other hard. And I know it's a sports movie, so sometimes, you know, you're a bit limited with what you can do. But I also think the nature of it being a soccer movie, it's just very hard to shoot. It's not like, you know, and I know we have the Mighty Ducks up on a pedestal, but like there's so much more you can do with shooting on the ice to make it look really pretty, especially in slow motion. This is really the only instance of slow motion where she's hosing them down. Everything else is a speed ramp. I feel like you could have shot it a little bit better if you had used more slow motion in some of the field work.
Yeah, but if they shot it in the summertime and everything's lush, it doesn't really do anything to lend to the idea that this town is completely decimated.
That's fair. That's fair. It does lend to that, like, grungy down and out look. That's for sure. It was also probably a lot more of a pleasant shoot in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
That time of year. So I'll give them that at least.
Yeah. So let's talk about the intro to the entire class, though. I can't stand this intro. This classroom intro is so bad. Other than my dad has a job, when she asks them what makes you different, what makes you special, that line is great. And it does, you know, it does tell us that everybody's unemployed, and you get it later that, oh, the old factory closed down for the zillionth time. The small town was decimated by the closing of the factory that they also call a plant because they don't stick to it being one thing. But it also, in that moment, and I'm jumping for a second, but it all sort of plays into this. You're sort of playing down to the audience where it's like, plant factory, you get it.
Exactly.
Like, that's how this entire movie sort of feels. The kid that just belches all of his lines.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
The goat. Where does the goat come from? The goat doesn't mean anything. It's just the mascot. It's always around. She's an exchange teacher. She's not necessarily an exchange student. This is Anna. She's an exchange teacher, so she's only going to be here for a little while. Like this whole thing. I'm fine with you bringing in a foreign teacher because the idea is to introduce what is at the time considered a foreigner's sport. But the fact that she's only there temporarily, in and of itself, just begs the question, why? Because they don't even play up on that, and they don't play up on the drama that's going to exist between her and, you know, Deputy Dog, as they will call him ad nauseum. So it just seems, again, like you had these ideas and you sort of half-baked them.
Exactly. And I feel like this is the perfect example of, had they focused on the adults in town a little bit more, it would have been so much more interesting.
Right.
You know, we've established that they're down and out. We don't really need to expand too much on that. But rather than a throwaway line about the plant closing, it would have been nice to see some of the parents struggling a little bit. You know, if you want to do this zany intro with the kids and the birds, that's fine. But then instead of, you know, putting them in school right away and cutting to that, you know, you get the intro for the teacher and then they're in school. We could have let it breathe a little bit more, like show them going home that night, show their parents, you know, maybe struggling to put dinner on the table, or having conversations about, you know, your dad's out looking for a job or something, or show more of Kate's home life, because that's also a very interesting story that they could have unpacked a lot more. So just a little bit of breathing room would have been nice before they put them in the classroom. And then, you know, I realize that they're trying to introduce the rest of the kid cast very quickly, but they're rushing the idea that everybody thinks the new teacher in town is hot. So, of course, you have to get them in the classroom right away. And it's like, we already did that in the previous scene. And now it becomes very contradictory, because if you like her, why are you giving her such a hard time? And I feel like, again, shifting the focus to the adults here would have been a lot more interesting, because these kids are all bored and can't wait to get out of their town. But Miss Montgomery is living the American dream. This is what she wanted. She's so fascinated with the country and the culture. It is a really great juxtaposition to have against these kids who don't appreciate how good they have it. And they never unpack that at all.
I think they try to do that through Kate and her father, because at one point, Miss Montgomery is trying to motivate them, and Kate says, I'm just going to end up a cashier at the Piggly Wiggly, so what difference does any of this make? I think that's sort of, that statement that she makes is just symbolism, if you know, you know, for the entire town. You've got that juxtaposed against her father, who is getting cut off at the gas station because he's run up a tab that he can't pay. He's in the bar, passed out, drunk. Kate sees it with her friends, scurries home, doesn't want to go and play with her friends because the one girl's like, oh, aren't you going to come play at my house? I feel like they had initially developed a story that was more centered around Kate and her father, and they were channeling the town through that, and they sort of abandoned it somewhere.
Agreed, because I wanted to see so much more of the dynamic between Kate and her father. Like, am I suggesting we see her being abused at home? No, not at all. But when you have an alcoholic parent, there is a lot more to it than what they depict, where he's just not supportive and not showing up at games. There's a lot more that they could have expanded there. And to your point with the line about Piggly Wiggly, it is so interesting that she already doesn't have enough faith in having a home. It's not like she's like, oh, I'm going to marry rich and get out of here.
Right.
She can't even grasp the concept of having a family of her own because her home life is so bad. But like, let's see it bad. Not showing up to games is not enough. And they do sort of tiptoe around the alcoholism because they later use that as a plot device when Huffer finds him in the bar and makes him do the dirty work.
Right.
So I feel like it was more in service of that plot point than it actually was for the characters. And again, you miss out on a really interesting storyline. So now we meet our other adult, the sheriff, played by Steve Guttenberg, who is doing one of the worst accents I've ever heard. And I really like Steve Guttenberg.
I love Steve Guttenberg.
I don't know where this is coming from. I like that the kids call him Deputy Dog and they have a good relationship with him. But my God, this accent, it's not Texan. It's hardly Southern. It's just bad.
Yeah, it's not great. Nor is the next day in school, where you get two things that would never fly today. First,
God. Kate
with a switchblade in class.
Yep.
That wouldn't happen today.
No.
Or, class, meet your new student, Joan Morales.
It's... God, your delivery right now is not an exaggeration on the principal's delivery in the film. It is so cringe. Not you, meaning the movie moment. Yeah. It's just awful, and it's unbelievable because I realize that they are. It is offensive on so many levels. Obviously, first and foremost, the racist level, where you're showing that these people would not even bother to learn the pronunciation, but you're also doubling down on the idea of their quote unquote country bumpkins who are uneducated and wouldn't know how to pronounce it either. So it's offensive on both levels there. But what I find truly unbelievable is that you have such a mix of Tex-Mex culture.
That's what I was going to say.
And Juan's character, he's not Mexican. They do establish that. I believe he's from El Salvador, they say. It's not Mexico. I because that is one of the things that they do expand upon, is that they just assume that because he's Latin, they just write it off as Mexico. So we know that much. But I find it very hard to believe that in Texas, you would not know how to pronounce a Latin name.
Even in 1995. I mean, this is the thing.
Exactly,
They
exactly.
do go ahead later. Juan himself, he is an American because he was born in the United States. And to your point, because Texas shares a border with Mexico, and yes, historically there have been border problems, there is a very large Latino population in the state of Texas, right? And so it's not uncommon to have Latino names in Texas. So the fact that in 1995 you're trying to set up Joe Juan Moreles, like, you're not, even by 1995 standards, you're talking down to the audience.
Yep.
You're talking down to the people that live in Texas.
Yep.
Like, you're trying to create a narrative that, yes, while racism to this day is still a thing, you're treating it like it's the 1940s in the 1990s, and it's dated as of 30 years ago, and that becomes a big problem with this film in totality.
No, I understand fully that they were just trying to paint the picture of Elma being such a small town that they don't have a lot of worldly exposure, but just so many ways of going about it where they didn't have to insult a culture, to your point, the audience as well. And the other thing is you're watering down the kid with the most interesting storyline.
Yeah.
I mean, Kate's got a good storyline, even though, like we said, they don't really unpack it. But there's so much that they could have done here. And, you know, they do get into his mother's story a little bit, but like they rush through it. We could have gotten a lot deeper with a very meaningful issue.
Yes.
But this is as much development as we get with the kid's home life.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause that for a few moments there because, as I said earlier, they sort of half-bake these ideas, and we'll get into it in a little while. There's one kid sitting behind Larry, who's played by Patrick Renna, that's making a sandwich in the middle of the class. I don't know. It's a straight-up plastic sandwich. Like, he's using, like, it looks like plastic or rubber toy parts. You're not even, like, passing it off as edible food.
Which is funny because they show the sheriff eating Twinkies at one point.
Yeah.
Like, if you had a box of those lying around, you know?
Yeah.
God, there is so much wrong with this movie. Yeah, so now we get more contradiction is that the kids, you know, once Juan settles in, the kids aren't paying attention again. And Miss Montgomery is desperately trying to get their attention. And she's like, I know, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And instead of having her talking when you know you're not engaging them, she just should have gone for the globe and started pulling out the soccer tricks. And then they could have been like, oh, hey, where'd you learn that? Instead of her saying, watch me do that. Why do they have a reason to watch it? They are already checked out.
Right. So she grabs a globe. She starts bouncing it on her head. And they're like, where'd you learn to do that? And she's like, you know, she explains it. And of course, they have to go into the gym. They start digging through all the gym stuff. The town doesn't own a soccer ball because they're a football town, which is fine. I can buy that. Like, that makes sense. So they end up with old rubber or old leather kickballs that look like they're from the 50s. Again, I buy that. I'm totally fine with that as a way of identifying the town. But then they kind of double down on this whole thing where she takes them outside and she goes, I'm going to teach you guys how to play soccer. And the kids go, soccer? That's for foreigners. And again, you are doubling down on something that by 1995 did not make sense, because I believe it was 1994, may have been 95, but I'm almost certain it was 94. The United States hosted the World Cup. So people were already keen to what soccer was. And in the mid to late 1970s, Pele came over from Brazil to play for the New York Cosmos, and the North American Soccer League had been born, and they were playing in front of crowds of 80,000 people. Soccer was already a thing. I wish that they would have rather played into, if you're gonna go whole hog on the bigotry of the town, do that. If you're going to go whole hog on, this is a football town, we ain't playing that soccer here, then go into that. But you don't go into anything. You take 1995 and put it into 1955, and that's the biggest problem.
You're exactly right, especially because they bother to make the joke, too, of she keeps saying football, 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 and they're like, that's not a football shaped like a lot. You would know that Europeans call football soccer.
Maybe not in 1995. I can buy that they would confuse it. Or that a kid, because some of them are, 10, 12 years old. I didn't know when I was 10 years old that they called soccer football.
They say it in Mrs. Doubtfire.
All right, well,
everybody should know. Every kid should know that.
Well, I don't, and if I did, I missed it. It doesn't matter. Most kids, I can forgive the kids. And if you want to make that a quote-unquote teachable moment, one of the, two that exist in this film, and that being one of them, which is a problem in and of itself, then so be it. But what doesn't make any sense is she has them out there, kicking a ball to each other from 3 feet away, and then she's like, great, your first game is tomorrow. I got you into a league.
Yes. I'm going to put a pin in that briefly, though, because my issue with this entire sequence, too, is why none of this is earned. Why are they even following her into the gym? Because, like I said, these classroom scenes are just such a contradiction. They all think, and they're teenage boys, they think she's hot. So, that would be enough of a reason to follow her. But they sort of abandon that idea because of the disrespect with them just ignoring her. They have no reason to follow her out of that classroom into the gym. They have no reason to follow her outside. And they certainly have no reason to be on this soccer team, which, oh, by the way, while they were practicing, she snuck away to go make a phone call.
Yeah.
And we needed at least another day in class of her trying to figure out how to relate to these kids. And then I would buy, if we give them an activity or her putting the pieces together of, well, they're not engaged in the classroom. They don't have great home lives. Maybe if I can give them this extracurricular thing, I'll enroll them and I'll teach them soccer. We just needed a little bit more connective tissue here instead of these forced throwaway lines. And then everything is just so convenient. And this is exactly where I'm saying it feels like the idea of this film was repurposed to fit the kids' narrative when there was so much more that was going on with the adults. Because then we've also watered down the sheriff is going to be the assistant coach because he's trying to relive his glory days of football and also try and get in Miss Montgomery's pants.
Yeah. So that whole thing gets watered down. And then what they water down, and it's a shame because you get this slice of life moment because Juan is not playing with them.
Right.
And you kind of forget that he's even there. And then he gets home. He and his mother are living in a trailer. She asks him how school was. He's catching up, and he mentions that they're starting to play soccer. He wants to play. We haven't seen him play, but, he wants to play. And it's straight out of the water boy. He's like, I want to make friends. She's like, I'm your friend, Bobby Boucher. That's... and the thing is, we don't know why she's being an overbearing mother, but what a great opportunity for us to just think that she's an overbearing, protective mother who goes, well, we move a lot, so it's going to hurt your feeling when you make friends and I have to pull you away again. If they planted that then and we didn't know that it's because she was an undocumented immigrant, the payoff on that later would have been phenomenal.
No, and this is an example of great direction because you have them living in a trailer. Their home is on wheels so that they can pick it up and move quickly. It's a huge visual cue to what's really going on.
Right. Here's the other thing that does not work at all.
First game coming up out of nowhere with zero character development.
That. Also, you've gone so hard to develop the old backwood Texas of this is for foreigners. Evidently, Every other town in Texas has embraced soccer.
Yeah,
It's just Elma.
Well, it's those big city folk.
Yeah.
That's also the picture that they're trying. And like, granted, okay, Austin wasn't known the way. Well, no, they are portraying Austin as the big city. I don't think that, you know, because they have like South by Southwest now, I don't think that like it wasn't on the map as such a cultural hotspot the way that it is now, as such a big artsy town, but they really were portraying it as like the big city, especially through the character, through the Knights coach, because that was his, I'm getting out of Elma. So you moved what, 40 minutes up the road?
I moved 45 minutes away to coach
they
soccer.
Coyote Uglied it. I'm going to the big bad city 40 minutes away.
Yeah. Also, these are the Hawks.
Thank you.
It's the Hawks.
Yeah, they're even in the same colors.
I know. They're the Hawks.
Well, the villains team, they got to be in black and white.
So here's the other thing that happens now. You've got the ragtag kids who aren't in uniforms, nothing organized, you know, like the Mighty Ducks, playing against the Hawks. So it's the Mighty Ducks. Unlike the Mighty Ducks, though, where District 5 is just so bad and Bombay doesn't want to help them until he does. In this case, Montgomery has tried to help them. They've at least on a very, very, very entry level played a little bit of soccer. Now, soccer when you're a kid is basically just a giant game of kill the guy with the ball, which is why I only played soccer for 1 year, and then I shifted my focus and stopped and focused on golf and baseball. In retrospect, I wish that I would have kept playing soccer because I enjoy it now. But at the time, that when you're 7 years old, it's not really an organized game. It's just kill the guy with the ball.
I think everybody played Pee-wee soccer to try to. It was just kind of like what you did, myself included. I actually made it a year longer than you did, and that was 2 years too long for me.
But you've seen them like kind of play and practice, and then when they go play the Knights, the game starts, and they just stand there. They literally they just don't move.
Yep.
Why?
And that's the issue, that they have not developed any of these characters at all yet, because it's not even like Miss Montgomery can stand on the sidelines and be like, oh, you remember how you like to do this thing? Channel that here and like start trying to play to the kids' strengths. We don't know what the strengths are or weaknesses that they're trying to improve on, because there is no conflict with these kids. It's all with the adults. So we don't even know how she can relate to them to try and get them engaged with the game.
Right.
There's no setup whatsoever.
I want to double back on one thing too, because I had forgotten about this. Before the first game, because they don't have enough players because Juan tells them he won't play, they go and they get Newt.
Right.
Who's the little kid.
Right, because the school is divided. I almost said the classroom. The school is divided into big kids and little kids. That's actually a throwaway line that works. So there's one for, I guess kindergarten to what? 3rd grade, and then 4th and up is about how old these kids look.
Yeah, well, this is my big problem. It's hard to know that because when you have a movie that takes place partly in a school, you kind of have to populate it, and they don't.
Right.
You have Miss Montgomery, you have Principal Joan Morales, and you have Newt, and you have Tom. There's no other teachers. There's no other kids.
Well, no, there's 2 classrooms. That's it.
But where are the other kids from the other classroom?
The small kids. Yeah.
But you don't see them. You see one of them.
Yeah.
If you're going to shoot in a school, you have to populate it. And if you're going to make it a plot point that they've been divided into big kids and little kids, show us more than one little kid.
Right. Or that could have been Newt's whole story, is that he's the youngest, but he's the only one in that classroom, and he wants to be with the rest of his peers. But because, the grade levels are broken up as such, this is his chance to fit in.
Yep.
The other thing we get, which is really just for the sake of having a sight gag, Larry has these hallucinations. Could we have at least had a throwaway line where he was reluctant to be the goalie because he's afraid to, like, give us something to latch onto as to why he's hallucinating? I feel like there's an entire scene missing going from practice to here, or a piece of the practice that's missing. Like, determine the kid positions, or at least show Miss Montgomery explaining the positions to the kids and why they fit into them. And again, that way there's something for them to do, and at least we know that they have a basic understanding of the game.
Right.
Because they don't even do the trope of, like, the kid scores on the wrong goal and gives the other team a point.
Right.
So it's like you knew enough not to do that, and the kids understand the game on that level where they're not going the wrong way, but, like, why? We don't know why. We don't see them understand at least this much.
Right. Instead, what we get is a scene where Tom, who's already bonded with the kids, tries to bond with them more by allowing him to drive his police car in a field. We are officially off the rails.
It is the most unmotivated thing. I do want to circle back to the one thing, though, because it is such a glaring error at the end of that first game. They're looking at something, or supposed to be looking at something that's happening on the field, and I don't know if they're thinking it was a bad call or whatever. Or I forget if they're trying to get the kids' attention, but Miss Montgomery and Tom are both looking opposite way. Their sight line are looking at opposite ends of the field, and they're talking about the same issue. It's just it's so bad. And then to your point with the unmotivated driving lesson, I think they were just desperately grasping at things to break up the practice and the games, just so that it feels like there's a passage of time and we are supposed to buy into these kids progressing. But other than the kids starting to take a liking to soccer, we're not seeing anything with the progression of the playing, other than, like, it's great, we have Juan, he's really good. The only person that's showing improvement really is Kate. And they don't really do a lot. Again, this could have been a great place she's practicing and putting in a lot of extra hours because now she's got a hobby that she's interested in that gets her out of the house with her dad. We do get a practice where they name the team the Big Green. But it's like the first practice after the first game, and she tells them she's going to have them build up to running a mile. But again, why do we trust her? At this point, they're not fully committing to liking it yet, but they're going along with it. And if the idea is just that there's nothing better to do in Elma, we still need a reason for them to be putting their faith in this teacher. And for them to want to do, I mean, even at this point, for crying out loud, the Gordon Bombay was established as an alcoholic, and this is his community service. But even the kids rally together and they want to do this for each other at this point. We don't get that moment other than the naming of the team in, like, the second practice. There's just no motivation for these kids.
No. What you get instead, because you mentioned Juan, what you get here, let's just call it what it is. The introduction to the token Latino soccer kid. That's how it comes off, because he comes out to, now the kids are practicing independent of Miss Montgomery, so at least they're showing that they have at least taken an interest in getting a little bit better. And Juan shows up and he starts dribbling the ball and he gets a shot on Larry and he scores, which isn't hard to do. And they're like, oh, wow, you're amazing. You've got to play. And he's like, I don't play soccer. And it's like, well, clearly you do. Instead of just using this as a means of he's trying so desperately to be a part of it and he can't, it sort of just comes off as cultural appropriation.
It absolutely does. And if you were going to bother to include it at all, they should have moved it up, because this is the moment where they want to bond as a team, because now they feel like they have a shot. So the motivation is coming so late, albeit they're doing it, entirely the wrong way anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they rush through the first game getting blown out to the town rallying around them, because we just did what we know to do. Let's have the adults and the kids play soccer in the rain and get covered in mud and laugh and giggle and tackle each other, and everybody will be on board except Edwin.
Exactly.
I mean, to the point where they tackle each other in the mud, and the next day inside the bar, every single person at the bar is reading a soccer magazine, except for Edwin. That's just like he's smoking his like Marlboro Reds, going, "As for foreigners," to do. He just like, leave that soccer out of my city. It's just it's these stereotypes. That's what it is. They're archetypes. But worse, they're stereotypes. It's the most laziest kind of screenwriting possible.
No, and I don't mind the trope of like the parents starting to get involved because the kids are playing better. So now they're all taking an interest. They're starting to go to games. They're really encouraging their kids, albeit done so badly with the Soccer 101 magazines. But again, this is where if the film was focused on both kids and parents, sort of like Angels in the Outfield, where now it's like, all right, they're starting to perform, everybody's interested again. You have a piece of that here, but like having the parent backstories fully fleshed out and why they're so invested in their kids, because you're using the town as a character. This is how the town gets rejuvenated. We need to care about the parents too. That's
the biggest problem, right? Well, I say the biggest problem. I think I've said that 3 or 4 times. That is one of the biggest problems. You have a movie about a town, and soccer should be a through point. But the problem is, you made this more of a soccer movie where the town's a character. And that's where a lot of this is falling flat. Soccer should have just been symbolic of the town. The town should have been the town. Big Green, Elma, like that's the town's nickname, so to speak. This should have been a movie about a town that used soccer as a through line, which, albeit not my favorite sports movie because they fabricated almost the whole thing, is sort of what they do well in Remember the Titans. And that's sort of what they should have done here. And they didn't. They committed to an idea, but they still kept getting pulled to, but this is what kids like to go see.
I have a comp for you. Had they done something like October Sky?
Yeah.
Where everybody gets so invested in these kids because they're giving the town hope, it would have helped to cover the fact that we never really unpack all of the parents' backstories completely. Because then we do get the scene where, because, now the town is invested and the team is doing better, although we don't really know why they're progressing better because we don't really see improvements in the soccer practice. We do get the coach of the Knights returning home, driving the whole half hour, 40 minutes up the road to go back to the bar, because the Big Green is getting so much notoriety. He's starting to sweat it out a little bit. So now, if he's afraid that he can't win on his own merit, he's going to have to cheat. And he finds his means of doing that by learning some information and realizing that he can go after the Big Green star player by ratting out the Morales family. But this scene in the bar where you have Larry's dad bartending, unfortunately Kate's dad getting drunk, and why can I never remember his name? Huffer, not Huffner. Huffer talking about, how he moved out of town. It establishes that they all have a history together. I wanted to live in that scene a little bit longer because, again, the parents could have been so much more interesting with the history of the town.
So here's what they should have done. And here's what they did not do. When Huffer comes back and he's catching up with the guys, and he says, yep, I moved to Austin. They said, what are you doing for a living? And he said that, I think he said he was a tax auditor and he liked what he did for a living. Okay, so this establishes why he left to go to the quote-unquote big city. And you have Kate's dad, intoxicated, says that Morales kid is probably an illegal. And
just because he's a bigot.
Just because he's a bigot.
Yeah.
And the light bulb goes off in Huffer's head. Well, wait a minute. I work for the government. Let me go ahead and look into this. Instead, he's kind of got that interesting. And all that was missing was him, like, rubbing his chin, like, maniacally.
Yep.
The next scene is Tom having to go, because it is his job, to confront Juan's mother, who admits that she is in the country illegally. That her son was born in the United States, so he is, in fact, a citizen, which would allow him to play in the soccer game, by the way. But she is not documented. And that she's basically forged her identity because she purchased a phony Social Security card. So, like, it's interesting to me that Disney went in this way for a couple of reasons. Number one, it subverts expectations that mom is basically a criminal because she's committed fraud by purchasing a phony Social Security card with a fake Social Security number, and it's technically tax fraud. What they could have done and should have done, it could have been, I came into the country, I overstayed a work visa, I had a child, I didn't want to be separated, I tried to get citizenship, I couldn't, so this is the route that I took. You needed to give her a reason, because otherwise, you sort of just wrote her as a criminal, which is problematic in and of itself. The other thing that they do poorly here is we don't actually see Huffer, like, go and investigate any of this on his own. You get the drunk, bigoted dad, which is fine as a character, because you need him to have his character arc. And I think you're trying to make the audience uncomfortable. Because if it's uncomfortable to hear it, it's uncomfortable to say it. And I think that's sort of like the purpose of doing characters like this. If you're trying to send a message, if you're trying to write a social commentary, like, this is the way to do it.
This is the story.
This is the story. But unfortunately, you have bigoted dad say something that only a bigoted dad would say. You've got a government official who just says, yeah, let's try it. And it ends up being true.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
It just ends up being true. A bigot says something to somebody who takes a shot in the dark, and they ended up being right. You literally wrote a stereotype as truth. And that's the biggest problem. And that's where this is half-baked. That's where I don't know if they were trying to tell that story and were afraid to do it because they wanted to release it under the Disney banner, when in reality, you could have written that story, you could have had a commentary, you could have had interesting characters, you could have had more drama, and you could have released this under Touchstone or Hollywood Pictures. And I think, to your point, because kids like sports movies, that's why they released it under Disney, that's why they shifted the focus to try to make it into a sports movie, which is not at all what this is, and you took a stereotype and made it truthful, and that is the most offensive thing about this.
You're absolutely right. No, and this is the most interesting storyline in the whole movie, and they don't even give it a chance to breathe, especially because Tom is trying to do the right thing. He's not going to call her out. He's just going to ask what's going on because they could be in danger. He's really trying to give her the heads up more than anything else, and they do cover why she couldn't go back because she why they do cover the explanation of why she bought the fake Social Security card. It's because she wanted to go back to see her parents. It is such a quick line, and this is where it's like, let the woman breathe, give her a little bit more of a monologue, because how are you not sympathetic to that story? And
Right.
especially in a Disney family movie, you know, this is a heartbreaking situation. You're torn between giving your kid an opportunity by letting him remain in the States because he's a citizen versus having to cut yourself off from your parent. That's a huge struggle and a huge decision, and something that is still relevant today. And they gloss over the whole damn thing.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. And to your point, Tom's just checking in on it. Tom doesn't arrest her. He doesn't detain her. Tom leaves. And it just happens to be that Kate is like riding her bike past the trailer,
Right.
sees Tom there and goes, what is he doing here? He's been around the entire time. Why all of a sudden are you so concerned that he happens to be at the house? He's been at everybody's house. He's been at your school. He's been at your games.
He's teaching driving.
Like, I feel like they needed a moment of her being suspicious.
Yeah.
And instead what should have happened, she should have, again, ways that you could have made this where she feels betrayed. Because all she sees is him walking out of the house and getting into his car and driving away.
Classic mix-up.
Classic mix-up, but it's not, because he's just doing what he's done the entire time, and that's been normal behavior. What she could have and should have done, go to see Juan, because there's like kind of a crush between the two of them, but they don't commit to it, and maybe they did, and it ended up on the cutting room floor. She should have gone to the door. She should have gone to knock on the door to see if Juan wanted to play soccer, go for a walk, or ride bikes, and overheard Tom grilling his mother about the status. And then that's the mix-up, classic mix-up, and then she leaves, and that's why she feels betrayed. And then you play up on, you took him out, or you took her out and took him off our team, pointing at Tom and pointing at her father, going, and you caused it. That's the classic mix-up, and that's how you play it right. Instead, you just see him there, and you don't hear anything, and that's enough. It just doesn't make sense.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Her reaction is the reaction to classic mix-up, but like there is no real mix-up. What they also could have done was, if she did have that beat with Juan, it could have been she's genuinely concerned for him, but he takes it as, well, you just want me for soccer.
Yes.
And then he's upset because it's like, girl, I got bigger problems than you right now in this soccer team. Let's move on, honestly, because we are almost talking as long as the runtime of this debacle. So we get to the junior soccer championships. How all of a sudden are we at the junior, for the people that don't know soccer in Texas, we have the junior championships just because we needed to call it that. You needed another announcer in that booth for somebody, or I'm sorry, another commentator for something to bounce off of, because these one-liners are just see and say with what's happening in the game, and it's terrible, which is not even the worst part about this whole sequence.
Is it Huffer with the sword that he just keeps walking around with? Is that the worst part of it? Because that one's pretty bad.
Well, I mean, we had a switchblade in the classroom, so a sword on a soccer field, why not? But this whole thing is dragging because they are trying to wrap up so many storylines that had no thread in Act 2. So again, I'm going to go back to the word I've been using this entire time. It feels unearned.
So, we've all got new uniforms, because I did like the homemade jerseys. I thought that was a nice touch.
And I thought it was fitting for what we've been tracking this entire time.
And I think that it's a special moment that gets glossed over when the whole town comes together to donate money to get them proper uniforms. This town does not have money.
Right.
But the big green gave the town an identity. It gave them hope. It gave them a feeling of pride. So for the town to turn around and give it back to them, that's a big moment. I mean, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, those people have absolutely no money. So when they give Charlie that chocolate bar because he's trying to get the golden ticket, you know how important that was because it cost them money that they really didn't have, but it was his birthday and they had to give him something. That, amazingly, pulled it off better than this did because, again, they rushed through something important strictly to get to this soccer game. So you're here, there's no Juan, and they're losing 2-0 at the half. Okay, that is to be expected, right? And now, here comes our savior, Deputy Dog, in his SWAT car. He's been out driving around trying to find Juan and his mother because they fled, because they were afraid of being deported. And here comes the hero. He's got them in the car. He shows up at the half. I found them a lawyer, and I'm going to sponsor them so they can stay.
Yep.
You mean you could have offered to do this the entire time?
And again, they rush through the line. You are putting the punctuation mark on the biggest story of this film. And it's like, I got it. It's taken care of. Like, no, this is a huge deal. And to your point, they had it in their back pocket the entire time. We could have done this. It also would have been nice to see the entire town welcome them back in instead of just Tom standing up to Huffer about it.
Right.
Of Juan belongs. They all belong. I mean, like, yes, it is delivering the important message and it is symbolic. But it would have been nice to see the entire town not accepting them because they always did. It was only Huffer making a big deal out of this, but it would have been nice to see protection and the entire town rallying around this kid the way that they did the entire team.
Well, the thing is, they tried to do this through Edwin. They tried to take all of the bigotry and the racism, and they tried to solely focus it through Edwin. And Edwin shows up at the game. So, like, that's the moment that I think they were trying to go for. And it's great for Edwin and for Kate, but you lose the through line of now the entire town is on board. Why? Because he was the lone holdout?
Exactly.
What is this, 12 Angry Men?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. They could have done a lot more. They should have done a lot more.
It also glosses over the fact that Edwin not only sobered himself up enough to drive there, but like we meet him and he probably shouldn't be driving anyway, but he can't afford to put gas in his car and he gets cut off. So how'd you get to the game? Because to your point, they're also glossing over how the entire town, who does not have a lot of money, we've gone from 2 cars transporting these kids back and forth to Austin to now the entire town coming out for a game.
Right.
They show it in the caravan.
Yeah.
Because now, but it lends more to the idea of like the popularity of the Big Green and the town rallying around them, not how hard this was for them to do.
Yeah. And then they do the thing. They do the thing that I hate, that I can't stand. In any sports film, you ignore the rules of the game because it's convenient for a film.
You sound like the Joker right now.
So angry whenever this happens. 5, 4, 3, 2, and Juan Morales scores at the 1 second mark. Great. You forget that there's also stoppage time added on to soccer games for injuries, substitutions, or for, things like Huffer wanting a delay of game penalty, but there's no such thing as a delay of game as far as I know in soccer. And I did have season tickets to the New York Cosmos. So there's no delay of game because you put extra time at the end because the clock never stops. It's not football. So you'd think that the coach of the defending champions would know you're going to get stoppage time added. So there is no delay of game. But because the writer didn't know soccer, they put in a line that doesn't make sense. And then, to put the cherry on top of the sundae, The referee comes out and goes, instead of overtime, we're just going to go straight to penalty kicks. Well, of course you are. Tell me I'm watching a movie without telling me I'm watching a movie.
I mean, in all fairness, is Pee Wee soccer different? I wouldn't know. But do they even call it penalty kicks? I think
Yes,
they
do.
say a shootout. I thought they said a shootout. And I was like, oh my God, it's the Mighty Ducks again. They are so desperately trying to do Mighty Ducks again.
Yeah. And then Little Newt wins it, which is actually a great moment because...
When Larry lifts him, it's super cute.
Because when he tried to volunteer and the other kids were sort of like heckling him, like, you're too little, you're too this, and he's like, yeah, but I'm not afraid. See, and that was a big line because none of the other kids wanted to volunteer to take the final kick because they were afraid. In that moment, he says, I'm not afraid. And that's when they're like, okay, then it's going to be you. It's such a great moment for him. And then, like you said, Larry picks him up at the end. And I think because at this point, I'm just so over the movie, that moment that should have touched me in a certain way, I'm like, well, not only did I know what's happening, but like, good, now this movie's over.
And it just ends.
It ends, and then, well, Huffer has to kiss the goat because you get this really creepy line before the game starts where he goes up to Anna and says, usually the other coaches and I, we put a wager on it, but seeing as you have no money, I feel bad taking your money. I'm recently divorced. How about a kiss? And she's like, okay, and if we win, you have to kiss Ernie the goat. So you needed all of that so that he would just have to kiss Ernie the goat.
Which I really think if this film was not repackaged from an adult or a more just family-friendly, all-encompassing film between kids and adults, this was the big pitch. We're going to take a town that's down on its luck. We're going to teach kids to play soccer, and their mascot is a big green goat. I mean, I will never understand how this got greenlit on the heels of Mighty Ducks when you can do something like that. I mean, I do understand in that, like I said, I think it's just trying to cash in on the popularity of these movies. But to know that they are made with so much more depth and heart, I just don't know how this script passes. Or maybe the script was great and we just cut so much of the meat and potatoes out.
Well, I can tell you what it was. Yes, I'm looking at it right now. Confirmed. The United States hosted the World Cup in 1994. That's a summer tournament. So, people had World Cup fever in the United States for the first time in 1994. Sports movies centered around kids are big in 1994. So, the World Cup ends in around middle of August. Magically, this goes into production in November of the same year, just months later. It's because Disney greenlit because they were trying to just repackage a formula that has worked and worked and worked time and time again. But instead of baseball, everybody's talking about soccer right now. So that.
Yeah.
That's why this got greenlit. And it feels rushed.
That was their big green.
Well, let's talk about the cast of the Big Green. I'm going to say this right now. It's not their fault.
No, that's the redeeming part of this, and not because it's a bunch of familiar faces, but like I wanted so much more from these characters.
Yeah. Steve Guttenberg plays Sheriff Tom Palmer. Other than his horrible, to your point, Texas accent, this is a thin character. Oh, guess what? You know what? The hell with it. They're all thin characters.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity here. Oh, guess what? There was an opportunity with all of them. There was an opportunity here to do so much with him.
Yeah.
Local, townie, washed-up football player, maybe he doesn't want to embrace soccer.
Ooh. That would have been interesting.
But you're never going to make Steve Guttenberg the bad guy.
Exactly. And instead they put him in this weird has been and never was kind of a pigeonhole.
I'm fine with that for comic relief, but I just wish that they would have done so much more, because he doesn't feel like a main character. He feels like a background character. They're taking the elements of a background character and making it a main character, and that doesn't work.
No, you're absolutely right. They could have also made the central conflict more around Huffer and him, because you know that they have a past. Huffer keeps taking digs that he's, like I said, a never was.
Yeah.
Instead of having the scene in the bar with the other two dads, maybe that's it. Maybe Huffer's threatening his job by forcing him to out the Moraleses. And then you have an internal conflict, which would have been interesting too.
Yep. Olivia Diabo plays Anna Montgomery. Sees the good in everybody. Plucky young teacher. I actually do buy the relationship with her and Steve Guttenberg. I mean, that's one of the few things the movie does well. I like her. But she's a thin veil of a character.
I like what she represents as far as the eternal optimism, but again, they could have explored her being an Americophile so much more, especially, like I said, juxtaposed against these kids who don't realize how good they have it. Yeah, it could have been so much deeper, and she should have been really the heart and soul of this film with her optimism, and they tried to make her that, but it doesn't cut through the rest of it.
J.O. Sanders plays Jay Huffer. This character, he could have been so good. He could have been a great villain.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been heartless, ruthless, and cold. And instead, you just made him Ranch Wilder again. We know him as Ranch Wilder from Angels in the Outfield, which is the I know better and I'm going to have that really moment where I take advantage of somebody and get what I need out of them, but then I don't actually show you what it is that I do. You just see that something happens. It's see and say, it's cause and effect. This character should have been phenomenal. He should have been unforgettable. And he's completely forgettable.
They didn't even give him the trope of he knows that his kid is not good enough, so he has to be pulling the strings to make his kid shine and get his kid ahead. His kid is fine.
Yep.
So there's really no motivation for him to do anything other than ego, which is what makes him really thin.
Let's start talking about some of our child actors here. Patrick Renna plays Larry. Chauncey Leopardi plays Evan. I didn't even know that was his name. Not Chauncey Leopardi. I didn't know
the character's name either. Yeah.
That's how forgettable these
Larry,
characters
I knew.
are. God, they're so much better in The Sandlot. They are so endearing and fleshed out and lovable in The Sandlot.
And that's what kills me, is because the two of them have been running in the same circle. There's so much overlap with their careers. They both had, small roles on Boy Meets World. Like, they know each other. I have to imagine there's a relationship in real life, even though The Sandlot comes after this when they're a little bit older.
No, Sandlot was 2 years before this.
Was it?
It was 1993. The Sandlot.
Patrick Renna looks so much older, though, in The Sandlot.
No, The Sandlot was before this.
All right, so now you've worked together before. That makes it even worse that you've worked together before. They have a bond, and you don't exploit that. Like, these two should have been the ones that, have the realization of, like, maybe we could better ourselves, because they are sort of the ringleaders in that. Not that it's very established, other than when when Larry decides to get up and follow Miss Montgomery out of the classroom and into the gym. If they're the ones that are being looked to or looked up to, they should have had the epiphany of maybe we can be something more. And they should have been rallying they should have been the Charlie Conways. And what a wasted opportunity.
Bug Hall plays Newt. This character is fun. He's endearing. Bug Hall does a really good job. He's got a great moment at the end. I think you probably did about as much with this character as you could have done, and I think that in a film that was cleaner and that told a better all-around story, I think this character would absolutely be fire. He would be so good. But his performance, his character, is another one that's just lost. And in fact, his performance, if you think about it, and his character, because the rest of them just fall so flat, and because the rest of them feel half-baked, he's probably the best performance and the best character in the movie.
I would agree with that, because in the story of the underdogs, he's the real underdog because he's got everything working against him. His age, his size, and they try to give him the arc of I'm not afraid, but like we also have nothing to sink our teeth into as to why he has found that within himself. But for as thin as the character is and as little screen time as he's got, Bug Hall is just so endearing, whether it's this or Alfalfa. Like, I still found myself rooting for him. Like, his moment at the end is what we should have felt for Miss Montgomery leading these kids to victory. And instead we get it through him. Yeah.
Jessica Robertson plays Kate Douglas. They tried so hard to set something up with her. And of all of these characters, she is definitely half-baked. But I think they probably went the furthest with her. And again, this should have been a memorable character. This character should have meant so much. This character should have told such a story.
Mm-hmm.
And they just completely squander it.
I'm wondering if maybe because of the immigration issue, Disney like sort of backpedaled and they didn't want to spend too much time there. And that's why both Juan and Kate's stories feel so half-baked, because the two most interesting storylines get half the time that they deserve. And again, I think this also comes from having the POV channeled through the kids and not the whole town, and not making it a multi-generational story. So much that they could have done here. While I appreciate they didn't go for the for what's expected in a film like this of having the co-ed team, where you gave her more to do than just the girl power moment and be on the same level as the guys.
Right, because we've seen that in Little Giants.
And with Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Also in D1 and D2. They did not know what to do with Connie and Julie's characters at all. You give Julie her big moment at the end when she catches Gunner's puck in the shootout, but like there's just nothing. So I appreciate that they were able to do more with Kate's characters than just, oh, she's holding her own as the girl on the team. But because it's such a deep issue that she's got an alcoholic parent, you completely missed the mark to really do something good with it.
Yeah. Anthony Esquivel plays Juan Morales. I think, again, you probably took this character as far as you could. I don't think you needed to do too much more with him. I think you needed to do more with the mom, because
Absolutely.
that's the biggest problem, and that's where this falls flat. Like, the fact that he moves around a lot and his mother doesn't want him to make friends, that in and of itself is sad, but the big reveal should be the, oh, wow. And, like, you would feel so much worse for him just if you would have fleshed her out a little bit more. To what you said about the immigration thing, it's like either do it or don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, you do it so that they get removed for half a game. But if Disney dialed back because they didn't want to go all the way, then they shouldn't have done it at all. Because guess what? You could have put them in a game against the Knights where he played the entire time, and the game still could have been 2-2. Because the Knights are a very good team. And because the Big Green is only starting to become a very good team. They are still the underdog. He could have played in that entire game and still ended it 2-2. You could have had the Knights take him out. Now, I guess you could sit there and say, well, it's too much like Adam Banks. Well, this entire thing is just the Mighty Ducks on grass. So what difference does it make at that point? So, like, you could have done it. Like, if you want to talk about something that kind of went all in on an idea, you went all in on making this the Mighty Ducks. So what's one more thing? Go in or don't go in. Don't half bake it. And if you're afraid of releasing it under the Disney banner, you had 2 other studios you could have released it under. You could have made it more of an adult film, but still it could have been a family movie night. And they just went with what people were paying for.
I agree with you. If you're going to bother to do it, you have to wholly commit to it and really flesh out the issue and bring it full circle. And they did it as a service, honestly. When you're going to tackle something like this, it could have been so much stronger and been so much more impactful. And with all of that being said, too, the real shame of it is that I think as a result, he got so little screen time. The actor is so charming.
Yeah.
I wanted more from him. I mean, aside from the fact that he had the 90s Ryder Strong haircut, had I seen this as a kid, I would have had a giant crush on him. Because, you know, not just because he's good looking, but because he was so charming in this role. And I feel like it would have been nice to see, you know, even if you didn't want to fully give him and Kate a relationship, it could have been nice to see them, just their friendship expanded upon a little bit more.
Well, and they kind of go into it, but not when Kate approaches him on the soccer field when he makes the comeback against the Knights, and she goes, next time, don't leave without saying goodbye. And his response is, well, next time I'll just take you with me. Like, so what does that mean? Does that mean there's a romance? Does that mean I'll just take my friend with me? There's so much that had to have ended up on the cutting room floor.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't imagine that somebody wrote such a hack job of a script and got it passed. Unless Disney was just that desperate to get a soccer movie out 6 months or a year within the World Cup happening. Final thoughts? I just gave them. This is probably the worst Disney sports movie we've reviewed on the show. It's one of the worst movies we've ever reviewed for the show.
Is it worse than Rocketman? I mean,
no.
We've had 2 stinkers in a row because you just put the hot chick last week down there with Rocketman.
Yeah.
This is probably bottom 3.
It's bottom 4, maybe 5. It's not as bad as Rocketman. It's not as bad as Hot Chick. It's not as bad as High School Musical 2. And I'm sure that there's another one in there that I'm forgetting about that was absolutely horrific. It's bottom 5. It could be bottom 4, but off the top of my head, without listing every bad movie, like, it's probably not as bad as The Good Dinosaur. Like, I could do that, and then there's going to be one I'll be like, oh, how did I forget about the Ghost of Buxley Hall? That one was pretty bad. Is it worse than that? Probably not, because they knew better in 1995. So actually, yes, then it would be worse than the Ghost of Buxley Hall. It's at least bottom 5 for me.
To me, it's bottom 3. I mean, Rocketman was not as good as I remembered as a child, but I still like Rocketman. But I'm not really counting the DComs in this, but this is definitely bottom 3. And my suggestion is, if you love this as a child, don't watch it again. Just let it be as it lives in your memory. And I hope we've not ruined it too much for you if you loved it as a child, but just sometimes you can't go back.
Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make it magical and finish the script, please.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.